Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 222.
That's a lot of twos.
That's a lot of twos. I'm Carl.
I'm Josh.
And with us, we have Troy. Troy is a Spacehulk aficionado, if you will. And honestly, one of our favorite people from Adepticon.
Absolutely.
Who, especially after last year where you set up a special session for our group to play through Spacehulk, and people who have listened to the show before have heard us talk about, I think I just often call it like the 3D Spacehulk, event. But Troy is one of the organizers of this event. Man, it is a load of fun. And we'll talk more about that later in the episode, because this whole episode is really about Spacehulk, what it is, where it came from.
The evolution
of it. Yeah, all those things. And so first off, let's just thank right away Kirk Bollinger and Jonathan Walter, who are two of our patrons. We very much appreciate your support. We are making some good progress there. We've got a bunch of interviews set up. Actually, this weekend, we're starting to record our Dark Heresy campaign, which will then break up into 30 to 45 minute chunks, so that you can follow along with what's going on there. We've got some great stuff going on. So
we're just about at a sweet spot for me to put out a blooper reel too. So there'll be some fun Patreon content coming out there.
Okay, great. I'm worried. I don't know what's in that, so I'm worried about that. So again, we're going to be talking about Spacehulk this episode. And I think it's in a great place. So before that, let's talk a little bit about Elite Choice, and I will go first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So my Elite Choice, which is from our Facebook community, we go in and we pick out things that we think
Discord
are representative of 40K, of the hobby, of the way we're trying to embrace the hobby. And this period, I chose Rich McTavish's Tim the Enchanter, is what he calls him.
Such a great name for that model.
This is one of my favorite Chaos Space Marine models. I'm trying to remember the actual name. I should have written it down. The actual name of, he's like the summoner possessed. I can't remember what his name is.
I don't remember the name. Yeah.
But he's a fantastic model. Those of you who are watching can see him here. But man, Tim took this. Rich took this to the next level. And immediately when I saw this is one of my favorite newer models, but newer, it's a couple years old now. But when I saw what he did with it, including like the chaos symbols on the legs and all this, it was really surprising to me how somebody can take a model that already has a lot on it and then add a little bit of flavor to it and turn it into something that I had not seen before.
It's a great model, and a beautiful amount of contrast with the glowing effects, like the flaming skulls or the glowing runes on the thigh, on the armor there. And Tim the Enchanter is a beautiful name, obviously, because it's referencing and very much inspired, or looks like Tim the Enchanter from Monty Python Holy Grail.
The head does.
Yeah. Having the goat horn head there, it's too perfect.
What? It's killing me that I can't remember the name of the model. I'll come up with it.
Master of Possessed? Master of Possession.
That may be it.
Yeah.
That may be it.
That's what.
It is a favorite model of mine. This is one of the best renditions of it I've ever seen. I actually reached out to Rich on behalf of Table War Charities as well, and Rich is going to paint up a model for us for Table War Charities to give away at Adepticon through the drawing that we do there. So a couple people have reached out. I made a post on our Facebook group that if people who were talented at painting wanted to help us, let's talk and see what they can paint up for us. So and so Rich has leaped at that opportunity, and I couldn't be happier with it.
Fantastic.
This is such a great model.
Yep. Beautifully done, well executed.
Yeah. What'd you pick?
So I went with Chris Chinook, and he painted an incredible Inquisitor model for a friend who's moving out of town. So they had played, I think, a weekly basis. They were playing Kill Team, just the running Kill Team kind of game going through. I don't recall if they were doing the campaign or not.
Yeah.
But his friend is moving out of the area, and this was kind of a parting gift of, hey, thanks for
all the fun times.
All the fun times that we've had together. And it's just this beautiful rendition of an Inquisitor, painted up, really well executed, beautifully done. Great
plasma pistol looks
glowing
awesome.
effect on the plasma pistol, just the duster cloak there. It's just, it's very kind of Wild West, but Inquisitor at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just incredibly well executed. And it was just such a nice gesture of this person you shared so much time over games and hobby with and chat and things like that. And like,
it sucks to have friends move out of the area.
it does. Yeah.
Like we've had a bunch of that not recently, but over the
years.
I mean, we lost AJ,
Jeff, AJ, Colin, Doug,
Lars. Man.
Yeah.
What the heck's the matter with these people? All right. Well.
Yep.
It's because California's too expensive.
It's so expensive here, man.
That's what it is. That's what it is. This is great stuff. I think we have two great additions to the Elite Choice here. Fantastic work, guys. Fantastic work. That being said, we are also on video on YouTube. Even if you don't listen or watch us on YouTube.
Yeah, it's if you have a moment and you want to take the time to give us a subscribe to just help put the word out and grow the channel, grow the community, like that would be super appreciative by us.
We could really use it.
And just this will be my YouTube plug for the episode here, but literally everything that we're talking about that has a visual component in this show, whether it's an Elite Choice, games played, hobby progress, something that's relevant to the content that we're doing, like in the video episodes of that, like you have the visual reference built in there. So if you're painting and just want to take a quick glance up when we're talking about something visual, like it's there in the video. So it's a cool option.
Especially when I'm like, I don't know what this model's called. And you're like, it's Master of Possession, you idiot. Like this will help you.
You'll see it on the screen there, if nothing else.
It'll help you throw shade my way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk hobby progress. Then we'll let Troy have a little conversation in that part of it. And then we'll leap into the main part of the show. So we will be right back. All right, and we're back. We're going to launch right into hobby progress and games played. So let's start with the workbench. Let's start with you.
Yeah.
Josh.
So I didn't do quite as much as I did last time, but still had a fairly productive 2 weeks here. So the first thing is I painted my Primaris Chaplain. And I'll say everything that I have painted here, I have not yet done the oil wash or blood effects on. So
okay.
all the highlighting, all the base coats, all the details are done. I just need to do the oil wash.
Before you do, you should come over here and do the oil wash, and we can do that.
Probably got 30 models ready to go for oil wash. So
Steve wants to come over,
okay.
and
Jody does also.
Okay,
so, yeah.
All
I
right.
guess
so we got a group.
We got to set up a day for it.
Okay.
Hey, that might be a good thing to. Well, we can talk about that later. For doing a live stream for.
Yes, I agree.
So in addition to the chaplain, and this is, I'm again building towards a boarding action list, a 1,000-point list, a 1,500-point list, and a 2,000-point list. And so on. I'm trying to share as many models as possible throughout that. Masters of the Forge put out a challenge that's happening over this month and going into a couple days into September. So we're almost at the end of that. So sorry for the late notice here, but they were doing basically a combat patrol hobby progress challenge of sorts.
This is Loopy show.
Loopy and his show. So this is run on their Discord. So part of that, I wanted to make sure that I got my Marines combat patrol done. So with the next model, which was the Primaris Terminator Librarian, and also the Leviathan Terminators, like with those models now being done to this state, I'm again just need to do the oil wash and blood effects, which will happen in the next week or so. That combat patrol will be completely done, and then I've also made some great progress into going into those expanded lists of higher point values. So yeah, Primaris Terminator Librarian's done. Primaris Terminators from Leviathan also got those done. I guess they're not Primaris, but Sternguard Veterans from the Leviathan set, those are well on their way. Have all the grays done, except for edge highlights, and then have a lot of the other base colors in there too. So those guys will be done pretty quickly. And they were the last unit that I needed for my boarding action list to go. So once those Sternguard are done, we'll be there. I got the grays done on the Reavers, so they're well on their way also, and that should be the last of my infantry for a while. And then started building the Brutalis Dreadnought, which is the double kind of combat fist dreadnought, which is I think just fitting for the Sharks. Again, going very assaulty with this army, which isn't in the best place for 10th edition right now, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play with and against. So just kind of doubling down on that. And the last thing that I did was new edition, new army, following through on my promise, is I did pick up the Eldar Combat Patrol box, and this will be the start of my 4th Eldar army. Yeah, not because they're good.
We'll see if you and I can be friends after this because we got a gameplay to talk about. Yeah. But Troy, let's talk about you for a second. Do you how much hobby do you typically do in the course of a week, a month? That kind of thing?
It is hot and cold. Yeah, I am very much an event driven person. Okay. So as we come to the fall here, I have I'm doing a 40K event in about a month in the beginning of October.
You're playing in it or you're running it?
Yeah, I'm playing in it. Okay. Yeah, I'm playing in it. Yeah, it's just like it's a friendly whatever. It's supposed to be. We'll see. It's supposed to be like a friendly, but it's like a 5-round 40K tournament.
Is anybody bringing Eldar? I'll tell you.
I don't know. I'm sure there will be. Yeah, there is supposedly a competitive tournament also. Then that's Dragon Con, which is down in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So that'll be good because again, I don't get a ton of play, but it's fun to do an event like that. So that'll drive me. I'm probably just pulling out there'll be a lot of things you'll see that are very Spacehulk adjacent so I get kind of a bang for bunch. So my G-Star cult, which has been my main army for probably the last 3 editions of 40K, mostly because I painted a whole bunch of them up for a Spacehulk event that we'll talk about later at some point. So I'm just going to probably tweak them, add some stuff to that and do a little bit. So I go hot, cold. I have a lot of friends who play a lot of Aegis Sigmar. So every once in a while I dabble in there just to have an army to do that. And I am doing a doubles event with a friend of mine in November. So we're kind of looking out for that. So we're starting to plan some things for that around there. So I go hot and cold. I kind of down here. I always have something on the bench working around some of that stuff. And again, a lot of it is the long game for Adepticon. So we're doing, I am finally, I think, completely redoing the Spacehulk. So I've already started. Oh, wow. And it's probably going to go all 3D print. So you guys can't see over here. Somewhere I'm going to start to leak some of the pictures of some of the new stuff we're going to do. So I'm just already just starting to paint or print stuff out. And again, I guess if procurement is hobby, I have a brand new bamboo printer sitting over there that I need to unpack that it's going to be the workhorse to get stuff done. So.
Is that resin or PLA or?
PLA. For all the terrain that works good. So I haven't dove into the resin 3D print stuff yet, but
I've heard great things about the Bamboo Lab. So looking forward to seeing what you guys have.
We have a friend of mine that also, that has one, and he's a guy at work, and he's really he does nothing but good things. That got me to dive in. I talked to him because I was on the edge, and he's like, "Oh yeah, love it." And so
it was Doug Johnson that talked me into getting the Prusa. Doug Johnson from Table Work, because he was printing something, and I'm like, I really don't want another hobby. I don't want something that I have to work at. And he's like, this thing's a workhorse. It doesn't take any. And sure enough, it just prints stuff out. It's so great. I do have a resin printer, which I need to set up. I'm actually clearing the area right now in my garage. It's just been too hot lately, but and I'm nervous about delving into it. But fortunately, I have the same one Jody has, so he can help.
You get the same one I have too.
That's right. So I've got resources I can go to if I need.
Resin it's a little messier and it's a little more finicky, but when it works, it's amazing.
Some of this is incredible. Seeing the stuff that Jody printed on it was what sold me. I was like, fine, all right. So, okay, well, that's interesting. You're actually. It sounds like you guys are very much going to event after event type of situation.
Yeah, it especially then we kind of have runs. I think in the fall there tends to be a lot of stuff that kind of comes up. And then again, then I get through Adepticon and I'm kind of I'm done for
take 6 months off
for kind of
listen. It's weird. I both come away revitalized from Adepticon, but also kind of worn out in some aspects. So okay, well, I myself, where do I start? Let me start with the easy, which is Aaron has been talking. My friend Aaron has been talking about playing as Grey Knights, and he needs to rebase a bunch of them because they're on 28 mil. And he's like, I need to put these on 32s. And then he had these resin bases he bought from a company, and he's like, yeah, but these are like $15 for 5 of these bases, so they're like really
for an army that adds up.
Yeah, it'll add up. I basically told him, look, if you're talking about you buy a box set for $50 for 5 guys, you're talking about adding $15, so you're really paying $65 for that set at that point.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, maybe I can 3D print these on a PLA printer. I'm like, okay, you know, and he found a couple of them. Like, he's like, hey, what do you think? He's like, I think those look terrible in comparison to what you had. And then I said, you know, have you thought about get a rolling pin from Green Stuff World, and using Super Sculpey, and then you roll these out. You can then bake it in the oven and break it up, and then because he wants like these ruined temple bases, and I go, we could get very close to that. And so I found a couple of the rolling pins that I thought, oh, these are some options that might work for you. I found one for my sisters. I was like, oh man, this looks good. And then there was a Necron one, and Aaron plays Necron, so you know, he saw that and he's like, oh man,
he pretty much had to.
Okay. So I talked him into buying a couple of those. And he bought me the sisters one, and I bought the Sculpey, so we kind of broke even.
Okay.
And so we'll share between the two of us. But I think that's a really great solution, right? It's something that I'm doing for my Chaos. I already have the rolling pin for the Chaos stuff, and I'm doing for the Black Legion. And I pulled out the bases I had created with sand and those Sculpey pieces and showed him, and he's like, oh yeah, this will really work. And then once you have that, like, you can just make as many as you want. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, you're better off just making a ton.
Just
initially.
a giant batch at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think with the wash over it, it'll all go into the.
You get the recesses in there, especially if you're doing an oil wash or even just any kind of shade.
It's going to look really good.
Grab those details. Yeah.
So, did that. And we've ordered those things to come, and I've started breaking up some of the Sculpey that. And Shell also likes doing this. Like, she likes getting involved in projects like this. So it's like, okay, we'll make.
She likes
the
breaking it part.
She just likes the rolling it out and baking it. She's a big help with that kind of stuff. So finally, and I've been talking about this forever, Caleb and Kat from CK Studios came over, and we spent an entire day. If you're a Patreon member, you've of Inquisitor level, you've already heard the interview with Caleb and Kat, or it's available if you haven't listened to it yet. It's a great interview.
It's a great interview, yeah.
If I do say so myself,
I say so.
I appreciate that.
I say so too.
Good.
It. Yeah.
Did you actually listen to it?
I listened to it. Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
What did you think of it?
No, I thought it was good. Yeah, and then I mean, I know them. I've done a couple classes with Caleb, so I know them a little bit, not you know a lot, but it was good to hear a lot. Again, I didn't know at all a lot of the backstory. That was super interesting about how they got into it and how they built that company and group and everything. So I thought it was super interesting.
I've worked hard on kind of improving my interviews and kind of the questions that I'm asking to get a little bit deeper. And I think you'll see that the next in that series, which is Influential Faces of 40K.
Yeah.
Is Dave, Mini Wargaming Dave, who I spent a good hour talking with and really dove deep into a couple things that I think will be interesting to people. So anyway, Caleb and Kat came over. They stayed the first night. The next day we recorded the interview. Then Shell and I spent 6 or 7 hours at least.
Yeah.
Now, Troy, the interesting thing is you said you've done classes with them. I have too.
Yep.
The Airbrush 101, 102, great stuff. Let me tell you, nothing beats one-on-one training with somebody
with a master
of Caleb's level.
Yeah.
I mean, it was absolutely enlightening. So the objective initially was, hey, we want to see how we can paint Shell's Night Lords. Caleb had painted up a kill team for Shell a while back. We wanted to do things in that vein, just for context. And so that was the impetus for it. I learned from Caleb numerous things. One, we did do a little bit of kind of what we call slap chop on these guys, but we took a different approach to it, which was very interesting. So normally when you see like these slap chop videos, it's like, oh, you do it black and then you dry brush it gray and then you dry brush a white and then you apply the contrast paints.
Maximizing your base coat contrast so the contrast paint can do its thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're either using contrast paint or speed paints. I've been starting to use the Army Painter speed paint too. Those things are nice.
Yeah. I'm curious to try some of those.
Super nice. Well, listen, I've got the mega set. You should try some of them, because what we did though, Caleb said, okay, well, we're going to do that. But what we're going to do is we have a black base. Then we're going to use this very, very dark purple, and you're going to dry brush it heavy all over it. And you couldn't even really see the purple like from the black when you did it. It was so subtle you couldn't really see it. Then we did like a 50-50 mix of kind of a mid-layer, almost pink, and purple, and dry brushing just down from that. You could start to see, okay, I see all the details and I see where it's showing up, but you're not doing like a real heavy dry brush over it. You're hitting the upper layers. Then I did a full-on pink. I don't remember the exact color, but it's a pinkish shade. I showed it to you. It's like a purple pink.
And you're doing a little bit less and less of this, so you're essentially getting a zenithal dry brush.
Right.
Yeah.
All the way to a white on the like most prominent areas, the face, because you want to pull the face out a bit, the top of the head, the top of the shoulders, knees that are sticking out, heels that are sticking out from the top down. Then taking a dark purple speed paint, we ran that through an airbrush to then tint it with that. And the interesting thing about, and this is one of the things that Caleb was pointing out, the more you coat the speed paint over this, the darker it's going to get.
Yeah.
Which sounds like that makes sense, but until you see it actually in action, you're like, oh, okay. So we went over that, and it brought down everything to this purple with like lighter glows in it.
Yeah.
It worked so amazingly well.
Nice.
Like it was.
They look great.
It takes a little practice. It's not like, oh, you just do this and it's easy. Like it took a little practice, but man, it was super useful. And so then Michelle was at work one day, and I was like, I'm just going to knock out the rest of these. So I spent 3-4 hours just knocking out the rest of
getting all the purples done. Nice.
We also went over how to paint a vehicle that I might need to revisit with Caleb again in the future. But he did a great job, and I understand the basics of that. But the other things we learned were edge highlighting. And in particular, like I know you use the side of the brush when you're edge highlighting, but it seems like it always comes out too thick for me. Caleb explained a lot about what you want to do is you want to load the brush with water, because you get the bristles up inside the brush to have water in them, and then you're just putting a little bit of whatever your edge highlight paint you're using is on the tip of the brush, and you unload it a little bit.
Yeah.
Then when you're using the side of the brush to do your highlights, it is constantly drawing water from within the brush, so you're not having the paint drying out on you. You don't have to have much paint because it's not drying out on you.
It's not quite of an extreme highlight.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit more control. It does dry out.
Yeah. And that took a little practice as well.
Yeah.
But I've got that down, which is great. Like that's something I've known to use the side, but I always have a problem with it. Now I think I'm made a lot of progress there. The next thing he taught us was how to paint the lightning bolts on on the Night Lords. And we're just using, now this is where it, Caleb makes it look easy, but he has such good airbrush control. We're having to use a super fine airbrush, and you're using that mid-tone, in this case, that like pinkish color. And you just draw a couple lines with this, like Caleb's just like, oh yeah, just draw a couple lines like this. And then I'm like, splat, oh no, So again, takes a little practice. You saw the one I practiced on. By the time I got to my third attempt, I was like, oh yeah, nailed it.
The one you have on the leg with the glow and then like the diffuse white of the lightning, like it looks incredible.
And
we'll get a shot of that.
It's this, and it's just a paintbrush, hand brush, and you're jaggedly adding the lightning. Yeah. Right. Looks great.
Looks great.
Looks great. We talked a little bit about on chaos models, you have a ton of filigree edge,
trim.
What do you call it? Trim that you have to paint. Typically it's painted gold or silver. So we looked at how to do that. And one of the things, as I was telling you, Josh, Caleb said, okay, so we're at this stage. We've got all the purple on the model. Now take this Black Templar contrast paint, or a black version of it that's similar for the Army Painter, and go over those edges. Go over everything that you're going to have to do. And you don't have to be like really careful about it. You want to be careful, but not like, you're not having to be super, super precise. You're just going over all that with this contrast paint. And what that's doing is actually, and you said oil wash can do a similar thing, is that paint will flow into the inner edge on the inside of that filigree. And so then when you go through and you paint your gold over that, you're not trying to get that inner edge.
That's
you're just
a millimeter deep.
Yeah, that's a millimeter deep, right? You're just getting the top, and it's black lining that edge. So it looks like, the example I use is like a comic book art, like you have that black around defining the thing, and then the color. And man, that was eye-opening.
And that'll clean up a lot of the work and just make it so much easier to do that much trim across.
And it just looks so much sharper, and it looks so much cleaner, and you're not risking hitting the shaded purple that you've just done with with now a gold that now you've really that's harder to fix.
It's really smart using a concentrated contrast paint to do just kind of a pre-shade there before you go and do the golds, because
exactly
that's where the shadows should be, and that's where you want that little extra depth and definition. So,
and that Black Templar contrast paint is dark, like it is a dark contrast paint. So okay, we learned that piece. That was great. We learned how to do the edging. We learned the lightning. Then he showed us how to do eyes on these Space Marines. And I need to go back to him for the steps again. Like I saw exactly how he did it. I even filmed it. I need to remember exactly what colors, but basically he went in with a white, painted the eyes with a white. Then we used a red contrast paint, went over that with the contrast paint, which just immediately gave it definition.
Yeah.
And then went in with like an orange I want to say a white to tap it again to get like the kind of shine on it. I have to go back and see how he did it. You saw the example.
Yeah,
it looks amazing.
Yeah.
So I'll get those steps so I can describe that piece a little bit
After
better.
you varnish too, you can always go in with just a little bit of like spot gloss, like a brush on gloss varnish, and just go right over the eyes there if you want a little extra.
If you even wanted to go that far,
which you don't have to do, but it does look good.
So and then we went over how to paint cloaks, and look, I won't go into all the details, but what I'm saying is having one-on-one time like that.
You got a thorough education, a re-education.
Yeah. And I mean, I attribute it to very much when I took up snowboarding, right? I took up snowboarding and I had no money, and my dad was like, come out, I'll pay for a lesson. So I joined a group lesson. Well, there was only one other person in the group.
Oh yeah.
And she left. Yeah. She left after 15 minutes.
That's a pretty good lesson.
And so I just had a snowboard instructor to myself for 2 hours. Like, it was immensely helpful to just have one-on-one training. And that's exactly what I got with Caleb. So, and yes, Caleb and Kat are friends of ours, and they probably would have come down and done it anyway. 2 or 3 years ago, I paid for this. Like, I won this through, he was part of a Table War Charities thing.
Right,
where he had put up, I will do a lesson with somebody online. They don't live too far from here. So online. And I think I ended up paying, $300 or $400 to win that bid. And it's just taken us this long to get together. Not through his fault or my fault. It's just,
it's been a crazy couple of years.
Stuff just hasn't mashed up. But man, I'd pay $400 to do it again. It was the best part though, Troy. I got to tell you, one of the funniest parts was, Shell gets anxiety. I think we all do. Everybody does too, a little bit. You get a little bit anxious about stuff. So, we had watched Caleb go through doing the purple on the model, and he does all the purple, and he says, "Okay, and here's how you do the lightning." Okay, he goes, "Now you two do it," and all of a sudden you're like, you go from this state of like you're moving at high speed and you're watching him do it, and you're like, "Yeah, I get it. Okay, I see. Okay, I get it." And he's like, "Now you do it." Okay, hang on a second. And so it took a little bit of practice, and Shell was really like, I am not comfortable with this. She she was not comfortable beginning the lesson to begin with. She'd never touched an airbrush. She claims that she had, but she didn't remember. Minimal exposure to an airbrush. So she was really nervous about it. But by the time Caleb was done and walked her through it, and she would do each phase and go, how's this? He go, that's great. Man. Next phase. And now she was
what
like
a start
super
as an introduction to like hobbying. Too.
Yeah.
Like you got you helping her build and paint, and then a lesson with Caleb. Like, yeah.
Man. You know,
I've been painting for 30 years, and Shell's going to show me up in a couple weeks.
We'll see. We'll see. There is some aspects of it. The doing the lightning, the base of the airbrush lightning that part's still a little tricky because you're doing such fine work and you're pushing through a lot of air before you ever pull back to get to get the lightning or the paint to flow through. And so a lot of times you're running into dry needle tip and you have to constantly be kind of cleaning the needle and then doing it. But we're going to get it looking great.
One thing you guys could do if you wanted to is before you get everything done before you get to the lightning phase, you can always do a gloss varnish as like your save
so
point.
You could go,
and then if it goes too far, it's way easier to scrub off from there.
I thought about that too. Yeah. I thought that might not be a bad idea because
you can do it for a batch and
you can make a mistake.
Do it for your first 5 and get a good hang of it there, and maybe you don't need to do it after that, but it's an option.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a great entire day, but like Shell said to me at the end of the day, she goes, my brain's full. Like I'm done. And I'm like, I get it. And when you take these classes that CK Studios does, and I think they're looking at getting back into doing them, I mean, you're 2 full days of airbrushing. I get halfway through the second day and I'm just like, I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm absolutely wiped, so
that's a lot of information, a lot of concentrated hobby.
For sure.
But what you gain out of that is,
So Shell's very excited about where we sit right now. We got to start working on. We're gonna start doing the lining and the lightning and stuff. So,
fantastic. Yeah.
I was very excited for her. Now, one of the things, what this leads me to is Caleb also looked at my Black Legion. He's like, let me show you how you could do this. And so we went through kind of a similar process with using blue highlights, which look good. Like there's no doubt it looks good. We're going to try a couple things to try to pull my butt out of the fire from where we've got Josh. When we do your oil wash technique, we're going to give that a try on the guys that I've already, because I've done edging on.
You've done a lot of trim already.
On like 30 guys already.
Would suck to go back and have to redo all that.
I'll do it if I got to. I'll do it if I got to. But I think they're like, I love the way my Terminators came out. And I think these guys are on that path. And I think the oil wash will solve what I'm trying to solve for. So we're going to do that.
It's worth a test. And if it doesn't do it, then it's not the right tool for it.
And then I'll go back and restart, but he did show me a way to do it. I was like, oh, I wish I'd started with this.
Wait, but you still have like all your vehicles and things, right? Because you've only started on infantry for that.
Yeah.
But so you can apply that.
Yeah, except
unless you think it's going to
look very different.
Much. Yeah.
Okay. So, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to thank Caleb and Kat for coming down and spending time with us and helping us. And Shell absolutely loved it, and we had such a great time.
What an awesome experience
it was fantastic. Yeah. So that was my hobby progress. It was fantastic. Let's jump into games played. We can go through this pretty quick. I know I dragged on there a little bit, but we can go on. Do you want to cover it? You and I played a game.
Well, yeah, we played a game. So having picked up the Eldar Combat Patrol, I wanted to take Eldar for a spin. And so we played a 1,000-point game. This is me and Carl. Carl brought his 1,000 Suns, and I got to use the Sheldar. Got the dust off the Sheldar here.
This is the first time I used the secondary objectives.
Yeah, so we did a full-on 1,000-point game, primaries, secondaries, using the Leviathan deck. So everything in there, it's a full-on game.
Yep.
All the stuff,
all the bells and whistles,
all the levers, all the knobs,
all the psychic powers,
all the psychic powers,
all the fate dice,
all the fate dice. Yeah. So Eldar are good.
Long story short, if you've looked at Warhammer Community, they released a couple weeks ago the Meta Watch thing, and they showed what the win percentage is for each of these armies, and Eldar is way out of whack, like 63%,
67, I think.
67%.
They're really up there. Yeah.
And, I looked at that and I was like, okay, but, whatever. I saw them in action today. And
I rolled well.
Yes.
I rolled hot.
Yes, no doubt. No doubt you were rolling hot. So you didn't even have to use the fate dice.
I was playing a strong army. I rolled well, and I've also been playing 40K for 32 plus years.
Way
so
more than I have.
I know what I'm doing, but it was a very one-sided game, but it was still a good time.
You know, look, playing with you is always fun. I'm not gonna. We just talked. 2 of our most memorable games have been you and I.
No, absolutely,
together.
yeah.
That being said, where do I start? I guess the point where I go, okay, no problem. What could I have done differently? Like, and it even from the point of building my list, what could I have built differently? What list could I take? I'm struggling to find answers for how I counter what just happened.
And that's a similar reaction to what I had with my game with Sky when he had his 2 units of Wraith Guards with Wraith Seers. Is like, I can kill 1 a turn. You just bring them back. Like, it's not even like, how do I deal with this? The list that I have is not the option. What I did in the game, I don't think I made mistakes. I learned a few things about what I could do differently, but I don't think I made mistakes. But it's interesting.
Yeah,
they're in an interesting spot.
Eldar winning first turn was difficult because I lost a Predator before it ever got to do anything. Like you and I talked about.
That's 10% of your army that didn't get to play today because it was dead before you even got your turn 1.
I could huddle behind something. I think they're going to come out and make some significant changes to the way the fate dice are working in Eldar in general.
Yeah.
I think they know. Like they're aware. They see where it sits, and they're going to make some adjustments. It's going to be more than points, though. That being said, I'm still curious to try against that list again, like with a demon list. And again, I think if demons were rolling hot, I'd be in good shape.
Well, like those are the models that I'm buying. Like I bought the combat patrol, and so half my list that I brought today was the combat patrol, and then the other half were Wraith Guard with a Wave Serpent and a Night Spinner.
They were so good. And on one hand, I'm happy to see them on the table and be good.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I was like, oh boy.
Which this is my 4th Eldar army, so I've just always loved Eldar, and just because project wise, I always like sell armies off to fund new projects, and just as you get the whim that way. But like this one, it's going to stick with me for a while, and it's they're going to be great for a while. They're going to be terrible in 2 editions, whatever. Maybe I'm going to have fun with it. But now that you've seen that list, like what I'm building towards, and like I would 100% like cater a list against that to like try and get a hard counter.
Well, that's my thing. I'm like, I'm not sure what to bring to even counter that. I mean, in the end, I was throwing like Terminators, Scarab Occult Terminators against Guardians just to kill something.
You killed Guardians, you killed the Farseer, and you killed the Warlock.
I did. Here's my most expensive unit against your weakest unit.
You crushed them.
Oh, yeah, that felt good.
Even with Fate Dice.
Almost took out the Wraith Lord after 3 rounds, but then you ran away like a baby. Now, one thing that was fun was you were able to like reposition that Wraith Lord at one point you knew I was coming at him, and you're like, well, I'm going to use this.
It was a stratagem.
Let
me move at the end of your movement turn.
So you moved away and kind of around a corner. And then I was like, well, I've got this Cabal psychic power that lets me move something else. So look, I'm going to move.
Which is a pretty sweet.
as well. Yeah. So as you moved, I kind of just moved and followed you with my Predator, and then I shot everything at your guy, and you just shrugged it all off. I was like, all right.
Because I kept rolling 6s for my saves.
Now, that being said, you were rolling very hot. Either way, it was a fun game, but yes, I agree. And this is after they've already nerfed.
They've already nerfed Fate Dice a little bit, and I think points-wise, the only thing that really got hit was the Wraith Knight, which obviously it didn't bring in a 1,000-point game because that's 500 points.
Jesus, it really?
It is, yeah. It's I think $4.95.
I can understand why.
Yeah, it's good, but it's pricey. So yeah, like I sent my list ahead of time and said, hey, counter, like feel free to cater to this list. So you had a hard counter, and you didn't even know what to expect at that point. So a game in now, like maybe you have a little bit more idea what to expect and what you can counter within. Like we'll see, and we'll have fun trying it if nothing else.
We'll see. Well, we'll figure it out.
It's going to take me a while to paint the Eldar because I'm not even going to start painting them until I get my sharks, like 2,000 points of sharks, completely done.
Here's the other thing I think. The most interesting rule I took away from today was that if you have monsters or what's the other? Vehicles locked in close combat, units that are not in that combat can still shoot at them at a -1.
Yeah. Right.
which was really fascinating if you don't have a pistol.
Yeah.
Right. So so that was kind of interesting because we had a Wraith Knight, a Wraith Lord, and a Demon Prince locked in combat, and we could shoot at them with other units, which I thought was kind of cool.
You can't tie those big units up the same way because they can still shoot at the unit they're engaged with, but they're also not completely safe being tied up with.
Right.
Like, you can't charge a weak unit knowing that, I can like kill this in your turn so that I'm free to do what I want on my turn. It's like, no,
that's kind of gone now,
which is, it's good. Like it's lethal, but
no, I thought it was cool.
But the big units are so much more survivable now also that I'm glad there's that counter.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that was a rule I learned today. So that was cool. We both I think we didn't realize that until we got kind of in that situation.
I knew they could shoot out. I didn't realize everyone could shoot at them too. So that was good.
Very cool.
Yeah. And it was a fun game, even though it was one-sided.
One-sided. Troy, you have, you said you kind of go hot and cold on playing, and you haven't played a lot lately, but you have.
I haven't played at least a lot of Warhammer. I think we got some Combat Patrol in, whatever that was. It's probably more than a month ago or so when it first came out. Had a big kind of game day over here, and nice. That was over to get their feet wet. And then, like I said, I'm now preparing, so I'm gonna line up a few like 1,000-point games as I over the next month here as I get my army kind of back to things. So
I have to say, I think
excited to play. So
I think the 1,000 point is where it's at. For learning, I'm about ready to increase that point scale. Combat Patrol was just different enough that I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. This is how they intro people to the game. I don't need this. Like, I need to play at the 1,000-point level. And now that we've layered in the secondary objectives and that kind of stuff, I actually found I really liked that.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
And so last episode I was talking about, like, the game you and I played, we only did primaries. The game I played was Sky, we only did primaries. And I think having those secondaries, especially we both did tactical, so they're the like rotating secondaries. It helps balance the game. It's not just about killing and grabbing a few objectives. Then, like, you're trying to do a few other things, and it's changing where you're moving, and it's adding that extra dynamic layer to the game that it's less of just a murder fest, even though it still was. But
yes, it was, Josh. Yes, it was. But no, I agree with you. I think, after having now played the basics and got the basics down, cool. Layering that next layer in, it really does enrich the game a bit. It really does enrich it quite a bit. So, yeah. Well, cool. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a short break. We're going to come back, and then we'll leap into Spacehulk, and we'll go over a little bit of history of Spacehulk, kind of the various editions it's been and what's gone on there. And we're really going to rely on Troy for some of his knowledge there. I like how he set up all the Spacehulks behind him.
Beautiful background.
Well thought out. And then we will talk about kind of taking it to the next level and beyond in the second part of that segment. So we will be right back. All right, and we are back, and now we're going to talk a little bit about Spacehulk. And I know we've talked about it before on this show, but we've now spent several years scrambling to get on Troy's schedule at Adepticon.
Yeah.
And
one of the things I'm most excited for about Adepticon next year is coming and hanging out with you guys again.
And I will not be there. I will not be there. So I know you guys will have fun. I'm going to be very disappointed.
We'll send you pictures.
I'm already having FOMO about this. I mean, I'm going to be in Australia. I'm going to be doing some other stuff at that time. So it's kind of a once in a lifetime trip that I had to take. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to see some friends in all locations of Australia, go to Formula One race, et cetera, et cetera. It'll be great. It just happens to be on the same weekend that Adepticon is. So, okay. But we have talked about Troy and his crew. In fact, I was just on your guys' Basement of Death podcast last month.
Yeah, it was great to have you on. And I also say, Carl, it is somewhat your own fault that it's so hard to get into my game.
I'm aware.
I believe. Because I mean, it would sell out, and it was always, I would fill out. And then wherever the years when Don and you got into the game and then talked about it, that was then exploded. Ever since then, it's on a lot of people's list on something they want to do.
I will tell you,
it's gone in like 2 to 3. We just joke because it's 2 to 3 minutes
and it's gone.
It's all sold out. And even last year we tried to run, like I ran, I don't know, 5 or 6 different, more than I ever have. But again, that's still only like 30 people out of the whatever.
Yeah.
And my you get basically Adepticon will give you your player list, and then it gives you the wait list. And if you can't see me, our wait list is pages and pages.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know if it's true. Like Matt Weeks came by once and he said, you guys have like the longest wait list out of any event. I don't know if I believe that against some of the big tournaments.
No, I don't.
It was funny for him to say that.
I don't. I believe it. I believe it. And it's funny because, yeah, we were kind of a victim of our own making there, because when I signed up for Adepticon, this event, I should shut up about it because I'm probably making it worse. Carl. No, but listen, it's okay. I've had my share. I think other people should get it totally too. Fair. This event is literally the first thing I try to sign up for. It is, I see when the openings are, and I'm like, okay, we're going to go for this one. We're going to go for this one.
I bought my badge. I signed up for Spacehulk, and I checked out.
And
that was it.
And then I
went back and got Titanicus later.
Yes. Yeah. That is, you are doing it right.
Yeah. Well, now everybody else can do it. So,
but now everybody else can do it. It is the event we have had the most fun with repeatedly. Shell even went to this. The first year she went to Adepticon, she showed up while we were playing, and then she and I worked together to kind of play the one force we were doing. And then the next year she came and she asked you guys, well, can I run the Tyranids instead? And
she had a great time murdering me.
Yeah, she murdered Josh. And every time she would kill a Marine, she would cheer. So I think she got it. For those who don't know, the way the game is rolled out when Troy does it and his crew is you have multiple Space Marine teams. So you're playing 6 players, I think 6 Space Marine players against the Basement of Death guys running the Gene Stealers and Cultists,
the Gribblies
and Tyranids. And but it's a much more collaborative event. I mean, you can get taken out and you have to push hard, but they're not as cutthroat as
Shell.
But you guys run such a great event, and we've talked about it repeatedly. It truly is the highlight of our stay there. And I just want to thank you again for last year, or this year, I should say, for running that extra event for us.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote to you separately. I said, could you please do this? And we'll buy you dinner and drinks. And you were like, if you help us clean up. I think it was the fastest you guys said it ever been cleaned up.
Oh, yeah. It was great.
Like, 6 extra hands just gathering everything and organizing it. But we truly, truly appreciate that. So it also, going to that, kind of opened my eyes to Spacehulk. Now, I had played Spacehulk before, but that was a whole new experience. So let's talk about where Spacehulk originally came from, which was in 1989, first edition of Spacehulk was released. For those who are living under a rock or are unaware, Spacehulk involves a Spacehulk is a amalgamation of various space vehicles, whether they be Xenos, Imperial, what have you, that have kind of
asteroids, spaceships
drawn all together,
gone through the warp, melded together,
and kind of travel through the warp and then come out at various places. And then usually they're infected with, in this case, Tyranids, but they can be infected with all kinds of things, whether it's chaos,
demons, cultists,
what have you. But the premise of the game is you are playing Space Marine Terminators, and supposedly Terminator armor is designed for this, moving through tiny corridors. I mean, every time you read in Black Library, it's like, oh, this Terminator armor is designed to... Okay. And you are making your way through a series of various missions. And that's one of the cool things about it. The game comes with a number of missions. You can play through the different ones. The Marines are typically on the back foot, meaning it is hard to win as the Marines. It is much easier to win as the Tyranids. And the idea is that you play the Marines and then you swap, and the person who played the Tyranids now plays the Marines, and you just get enjoyment out of the game. If you can actually pull a victory out of it, well done. Like you've earned it. You've earned it. It's been a tough haul. You clearly got into this early, Troy. What was your earliest experience with Spacehulk?
So the earliest one was 1990 at Gen Con when it was in Milwaukee.
Nice.
My brother John, who again helps me tremendously as we run the game, and I couldn't do it without him.
Yeah, he's all right.
But him and I, we basically split that box that's behind me, if you can see.
Yeah.
I think it was like $60 back in the, so it was like, oh, $30, let's kind of do that. And we already had kind of got into 40K, which is only out a couple of years at that point. So really kind of a cool universe. Also, again, Games Workshop was kind of maybe, influenced by a lot of the Aliens and Alien IP.
Yep.
And I was also, again, one of my favorite things ever. So that was like, I think what kind of drew us in there. And then kind of found that there was this really cool game, right? That you talked about it, like in some ways, like the rules are pretty simple. There's not a whole lot going on once you kind of get it, but like this just endless decision making. You got some hidden movement. You got a lot of tense there, and so it's you never really master it around that. And so I think that's what really got us, is just enjoying. I always love like a lot of games that have very, we're gonna say, simplistic gameplay, but strategy wise, there's a lot going on, and that's what we found. So it's a combination of, okay, there's a cool game here, plus we love the IP was just really cool stuff. So
right.
It's part board game, part miniature game, and lots of tactical depth to it and decision making that makes even if you're playing the same set missions over and over again, it's going to be a different game
every time.
Yeah,
every time. Yeah, and I mean, to win as the Marines, you are really on the knife's edge, as you're pushing away. And that's one of the interesting things about it, is that the missions you find and you realize they are possible to win. They are not likely to win, and so they are tuned so precisely. It feels like. I don't know if that's how it was in the first edition of it, but by the third and fourth edition, it feels like these are tuned exactly, like they've been worked through exactly. Then Spacehulk comes out. It's massively popular.
Yeah, yeah.
It is massively popular, and they do some White Dwarf articles adding scenarios and that kind of thing, which end up getting collected and published into a book. But then Deathwing, the box set, comes out in 1990, and that introduces the Deathwing, the first company of the Dark Angels. Yep. So initially, what chapter were you playing initially? Was that even defined in first edition?
I want to say it was Blood Angels in the beginning.
It would make sense.
Think, there's always kind of, Blood Angels have always had kind of this relationship with the Spacehulk. And so I think it was Blood Angels.
So the Dark Angels get introduced now, which have a few different rules. They include a captain and a librarian, and an additional Terminator weapons. Like they add additional weapons to the game. So it just increases your flexibility, and it actually, I would say, takes the game and refreshes it. Again.
Because again, if you're playing those same set missions, I think this also introduced some missions. I don't recall.
It does.
That, but even if you're playing the classic missions with a slightly different loadout, or like, oh, now I have a chain fist, so I can cut this door out, and that's one less obstacle that I have. It refreshes, exactly to your point, that one thing it also did was it introduced a solo play mode,
right?
Which was a just kind of way to give extra legs to a game that was already very popular.
Yeah. One of the funny things, is a kind of side tangent here, I used to play a game which feels kind of Space Hulky in a way. It was a Tom Wham game from way back in the day called Awful Green Things from Outer Space. I don't know if you guys have played it.
I haven't played it, but familiar with it. Yeah.
It's hard to get a copy of now. I think Tom has a copy of it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You should play it. You would enjoy it. So it introduces solo play. It introduces, hey, now you can play as the Deathwing, and here they've got a different loadout than your Blood Angels in the initial wave. Then they introduce Gene Stealer, another box set. So they're adding box sets onto that, which is something I wish I would do for this one. Yeah. And this introduced Gene Stealer cults, including human Gene Stealer hybrids, which I didn't realize was part of the original thing. I thought you guys, Troy, had you and the Basement of Death guys had to introduce those yourself, but there were rules for this previously.
They're an homage. Yeah, is basically that's what we do. And I don't like in my game. I literally have. There's a couple of the hybrid models that are literally from the genes way back from models that are worked in there.
That's amazing.
But it's a really nice addition to it too. And like in playing in your guys' game of just having that option of like, oh, and here's aberrants and things like that that just really add more layers to the whole experience.
So it also introduced the Magus and the Patriarch.
Yep.
And then introduced like a psychic element to the game as well that didn't previously exist. So like psychic combat, and included additional board sectors. So now you're adding map tiles to what existed previously as well.
And I don't know if I think Deathwing is what made the game, like that expansion, because there came the assault cannon.
Yeah.
That was which is infamous,
huge.
right?
Yeah.
On that. Yeah. And just the different giving the Marines kind of more tools in their arsenal. It also opened up some of the tiles, and that was really like, again, Spacehulk was good. And then when they introduced the Deathwing thing, expansion, that's what really made it for me. And again, you can't overlook the fiction that's in the rule book is one of the best stories ever. Like, that was back in the day when Black Library really didn't exist. You didn't have a lot of kind of lore. And I don't know how many pages it is, but half that rule book, Deathwing, is the story of them going into like a hive cult and stuff like that, which is really great. And then you had Gene Stealer come along, which introduced some good stuff, but I'll say broke the game a little bit.
Okay.
In that the Gene Stealer, like the psychics started, if you played with all the psychic rules, it kind of takes over the game.
Okay.
And what happened is that it would be the Psyker on the Marine side and the Psyker, the Magnus and stuff on the Gene Stealer side. That's who the battle came down to. All the other people got knocked out, or they just weren't as powerful.
Got it.
So we ended up, we played it a lot. And then we always ended up kind of like leaving those, like you didn't need to use them. So we kind of left a lot of those rules out. So that was kind of the plus and minus with Gene Stealer. It was cool, all the stuff like the hybrids and things they introduced. But I do think that was what point up to that point, I think they were very careful with balance and things were good. But this kind of overdid it with a lot of all these. I could understand, right? It's very cool. Here's some cool psychic things, spells, all kinds of things of that. But it didn't end up not being a fun experience sometimes with the gameplay.
It became the hero hammer of Spacehulk.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so after that, they release Spacehulk Campaigns.
Yeah.
Which is a hardback book in 91, but released again as a paperback book in 93. This introduces Imperial Space Marine Terminators against Chaos Space Marine Terminators. Oh, look at that. Hold that up again.
Yeah, that book's in great shape.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah. It's
Has that even been opened?
It has been opened, but not nowadays. It's just more of I go and look at there is electronic versions of it that I look at. This is literally a collector's piece.
For sure. Very interesting. We should have had that on the rare 40K materials.
Part 2.
I might need to borrow that from you. So against Chaos Space, I did not know this ever existed. That sounds fascinating.
I did not either.
Did you play any of this?
We never did. I think I did. I might have done one scenario where we did kind of a Marine on Marine big board. I was like, I think it was at some convention once and they had Chaos and things like that. Again, Spacehulk wasn't really made for Marine versus Marine. So it runs into a little bit of some play issues. But it can be fun. Yeah.
But what would be interesting is you now have like cultists and mutants and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in one, look. It really resonates with the Tyranids.
Stormbolters against power or Terminator armor shouldn't be that effective, right? So you have to change a lot of core mechanics in order to make that.
That's very true. But this also introduced using just Space Marines in power armor.
Yeah.
And included additional board sections. But the interesting thing about the Space Marines in power armor is, again, when I played with you guys at Adepticon, I had in my unit an Inquisitor and some Space Marines in power armor. Yep. How much of the rules did you take from how they played there into, because facing became not an issue for Space Marines in power armor, which was brilliant, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're really close because we've always a lot of those we took exactly from that. We might have tweaked it a little bit if there were things that didn't make sense with some of the changes that they did in the later editions, but yeah, almost all the rules when we bring things in are very much inspired by first edition kind of rule set. So yeah,
and so for people who don't know, when you're playing Space Hulk and you're these Terminators, you're these hulking Terminators walking through small corridors. You have a certain number of action points in which you can make your movement, and every turn counts in as an action point. And so even backing up costs two points for every step backwards you take, and you're playing on a board with squares. And so if you maybe have 5 action points, let's say, and your Terminator's moving forward, you turn left to go down the corridor, you turn right, you've used up a ton of action.
You get 4 per model.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you roll
and then
die.
you have a couple of command points
Bonus
that you can
dice.
spend to potentially help.
But where a Space Marine in power armor, not Terminator armor, makes such a huge difference is not having to make those turns costing points.
Yeah.
You're moving a lot faster.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mind you, you're also more at risk. So, okay, that's first edition. Then, and that's ends around 93. 3 years later, 1996, the second edition of Space Hulk is released. And in this edition, they have revamped board artwork and miniatures. It has 2 identical 5-man Terminator squads with standard weaponry and a bunch of assorted gene stealers.
Model-wise, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the rules are simplified a bit.
It's a really different game, right? Which I'm sure Troy can tell us a lot more about.
Yeah, it was kind of like they were only going to do one shot probably. And so they kind of tried to take everything that they had done and simplify and put it out. The big difference, and what's, again, something we use, is they changed how the flamers work. And flamers, which are probably, you could say, the most powerful weapon in the game because of the way they can take out a whole board section. Yeah. They also block movement, line of sight. They're besides a weapon, they're also a way to control the gene stealers. But they in first edition, and then they went back to it's you only have like 6 shots and you fire at a board area. In second edition, they kind of went to where you're firing one flame per square. You can kind of make a chain, so it's more of a line of fire that you're moving in there. So a little more ammo, and that was one of the biggest changes that they have on there. Again, the core stuff's pretty similar. I don't think they had all the weapons that they had kind of done. Again, they kind of simplified that, but some of that wasn't that hard to add back in either. But a lot of it was just an upgrade of the models themselves and the boards. Definitely, it's brighter. It actually ends up being, and it's this whatever. So it might have been just what the mid 90s were. Yeah, in that not as grim dark, a little more changing color. Yeah, and the same thing. The tiles themselves are a lot brighter on some of that. So.
And they added additional stuff to this through White Dwarf and the Citadel Journal at the time, including additional missions, and then they allowed for like Space Wolves Terminators in one mission, but they never like collected this all into another release. So it sounds to me like second edition was just kind of a one shot. Here's the release, and in fact, I think the point was the rules didn't really lend themselves to much expansion at that point. So okay. So then, many years later, we go from 96 to 2009. So that's 13 years later.
That's a chunk of time.
The Space Hulk 3rd edition box drops. This is the one I own.
I bought it immediately.
So did a lot of people.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it was this set that kind of started the whole Games Workshop surprise December box, whatever that was going to be. We saw this followed up by what was the not Man of War, but it was the Dreadfleet, right? Like they kind of started this like it was weird because I think people made this assumption that every year they were going to do some special drop like this because they did once or twice.
Right, yeah.
But I don't think that was ever Games Workshop's intention.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I know for a fact the 3rd edition run of Space Hulk sold way beyond expectations for
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
I don't think they
Hugely in demand.
anticipated.
If you ever looked on the used market for this,
It was going crazy numbers.
yeah, the demand was much higher than the supply was for sure.
Yeah. This came with Blood Angels as the starting
Yep.
squad. Beautifully crafted miniatures for them.
Yeah, they really redid the line for both the Tyranids and Marines. For
Yeah,
this
just
one.
stunningly crafted. They come in, I think the Gene Stealers are like a dark blue or purple. The plastic, the Terminators are a red.
Yep.
But obviously they lend themselves well to being painted. They are hard plastic. They are
Great detail.
equal to anything Games Workshop had put out at the time.
Yeah, they are push fit, easy to assemble miniatures, but you're not sacrificing detail for that, especially once you paint them like you wouldn't know. Yeah, exactly.
Even the map tiles are like stunningly done. The artwork on them
beautifully
is stunning.
rendered. They even have little depressions in the tiles to kind of mark those squares. So it's even just a little extra immersive, but also a nice game aid of like really distinguishing which square is which.
Yeah. The game's rules are, I think, clearer and streamlined. Much like they've done, I think they've modernized a bunch of stuff, yet it still has the core Spacehulk feel. It is still incredibly difficult to win as the Marines.
I only played a few games of first edition and a few games of second edition. I've played a lot of games of third edition, but it definitely feels more like the spiritual successor of first edition. Like that is kind of the more of a reprinting of that, but also modernization at the same time. Like you do have psychics in that with the librarian.
Yeah.
You've got captains. You've got all the weapon assortments with thunderhammers and assault cannons and the flamer, heavy flamer, and you get the broodlord with the Gene Stealers, which is a nice, very powerful model for those guys too. And just the models are stunning. It probably harkens back more towards like the first edition rules than the second edition rules. Yeah, definitely.
But man, everything about this set is amazing. And like I said, sold out within 24 hours. It was gone.
Yep.
Then like 4 or 5 years later, they re-release it. Although I think you called it 4th edition when we had our pre-discussion, Troy.
Yeah.
3.5.
Yeah, it's 3.5 because I think they just added a few little. Again, it's literally the same, almost the same thing.
Same models.
The rule book is slightly from the models thing. I think there might be a couple different tiles because I think they added like the idea of like a landing.
They added
pod or something like
they
that.
Added the tile for
boarding pod or something.
for the boarding pod. So you would start in this boarding pod tile, but I mean, it didn't really change the.
No, yeah. So that's the only. I think they added a mission in there that uses those things, and otherwise, I think the rules themselves are very similar. But there is slight difference. You can tell if you have the third versus that third 3.5 or later edition that came out.
You know,
the box set is slightly. The cover art's almost exactly the same, but just a little bit different.
Oh, really?
The font they used. I think the font they used is different on the Spacehulk. That's about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing to mention is that the 3rd edition is the first edition that they did that the models were specifically designed for Spacehulk.
Yes. Yeah.
And boy, if you were a Blood Angels player, you were like hunting down those Terminators at that time. But yeah, all previous editions, they just were sprues that they already had for 40K tossed in. This is the first time they're designed specifically.
Yeah, bespoke for the game. Yeah.
Yep.
I played a lot of 3rd edition, and actually, me and my wife had a fun tradition was playing Spacehulk, the two of us, on New Year's Eve. So we would set it up. She always wanted to play the Gene Stealers because she always felt that the Marines were too complex.
Yeah.
But I would always win because a dice game, as we were talking earlier, my wife does not enjoy dice games. So every time Overwatch would actually work, she'd get really disappointed. So unless she was able to just completely murder me, which didn't happen often, she wasn't having a great time. And she actually left herself a note inside the box of 3rd edition. She said, left her to herself and said, "Don't let me play this game again." I was like, "Oh no!" So I actually ended up selling it. Which because I was like, okay, like if she's not going to play it, Jody has his copy. You've got a copy. Like I probably don't need it. So I ended up selling it at a Game Castle flea market because it was sitting there for a while.
Yeah.
But I will say, as soon as we played your game, Troy, at Adepticon this year, I
hunted one
found
down.
a copy and rebought it again. It's like, no,
And you can occasionally
I
find
have
them.
to have this.
You can occasionally find them in stores still. Because the second release, the next release, they printed quite a few. And even though it sold out like online, like a lot of retailers had them in stock. And to this day, sometimes they're still sitting on a shelf somewhere. Now, one of the cool things they released, and they released these as digital releases because at the time, Games Workshop was just delving into like digitally releasing their rules. Yeah. They did release 3 more campaigns. Now, it's important to understand like the Blood Angels models you're playing through a campaign.
Yes.
Like there is mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, and they tell a story while you're trying to work your way through.
You're rescuing this brother, and there's there's missions where there's unconscious Terminators that you have to go and revive, and then you get to use them in future missions.
Right.
Yeah, it's progressive, which is neat.
They released what they called Spacehulk mission files, and they did one for the Dark Angels called Bringer of Sorrow. They did one for the Space Wolves called Return to Calidus, and they did one for the Ultramarines called Duty and Honor. And I bought all 3 of these, and I actually checked my iPad the other day, and I can still download them because I've bought them. They're still available for download, and I have them. Because at the times I was playing Ultramarines all the time, and so I was like, oh, let's play Space Hulk. I want to play these Ultramarines. I hate that we're talking about this because it's making me go, oh, maybe I could paint up a squad of Terminators. I do not need to do this.
You got the new Primaris models
with
an assault cannon.
I am busy with Black Legion. I need to stay focused. Don't let me get off target. But I loved that they introduced these. Like I loved that they introduced just like these different chapters, and you could just go buy a squad of Space Wolf Terminators, turn them into this, and boom, you're good to go.
Get some Wolf Guard ready to go. Get
super good.
Yep. I have not played these, and I actually didn't realize they released that. But that's a really cool thing that I'll love to check out sometime.
I'll show them to you.
Yeah, and they are really cool. And I don't know if it's kind of hidden in there, but each squad they actually introduced little new rules for each, because there's they tried to make, again, kind of where we took our inspiration from a lot of times too. So each chapter kind of plays a little differently because they've given each of them a little bit of a special weapon or a special rule around that. So that's what was really cool about those 3 digital sets come out, is you're able to kind of see how they were kind of expanding it in different ways around it. Yeah, so those are the other thing that's kind of hidden in there. There's missions, but I just took like, oh, look, here's really new Marine types and new weapon types that you could add to the game.
It does feel different.
Are those using single 5-man squads, or are they doing the larger 2 5-man squads?
Yeah, 5s. Yeah,
5s each.
Just 5s.
Yeah. So it is a smaller investment if you want to get the models.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Neat. Cool.
So yeah, and those are great. I'll show you later. You can see the pictures here if you're watching. But great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. And that's one of the things I like. And we'll talk about Troy's game even more.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The Basement of Death game, I should say. It's not always attributed to Troy, but it is a huge team effort.
It's a family endeavor.
It is.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. It's gone to the next generation.
That's right.
But in addition to this, they have released a swath of video games around Spacehulk. Not only have they released Spacehulk and Spacehulk Tactics, which, by the way, Spacehulk Tactics is a great video game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've played it,
I have not, but
the animations and graphics on it are fantastic.
It looks great, and I've been very tempted. I do own Spacehulk, which is a pretty true replica, I feel, of 3rd edition.
Spacehulk Tactics is very different. Yeah. It takes like its kind of own rule thing, but it is fun.
And I've enjoyed playing, even like, again, because my wife left a note saying never play this game again. So I got the video game so I could at least play against the computer, or you can also play against friends online, which was a great option for me. So I didn't feel bad about selling my set at that point. But again, after our game, it's like, no, I got to have a set.
Then Deathwing came out, which is first-person shooter.
Yeah.
And Aaron, myself, and I know we played with Campbell at least once, and we played with my buddy Craig in Australia at least once. But we wanted to play it more. We fought our way through most of the missions there, and it's fun.
Yeah,
It's fun. I mean, it's crazy and it's hard sometimes, but it should be hard.
I've only done that single player. I haven't played with a group.
Oh, it's much better with a group.
I'm sure.
Have you played it, Troy?
Yeah, it is. So again, it was really us. It was me, my two brothers, and then my nephew, who you guys all saw that playing. But when that came out, we would be online doing all.
It's so good.
And awesome. We played. I think we played through the whole thing. Like we would get on.
Some of those missions were so hard, hard. It really captured the feel of it. I thought. That's awesome. We should play that again.
Yeah, I would love to.
Oh man, it's so good.
What platform were you in? Because
I was playing on PC.
That was PC, Xbox, PlayStation. There was a lot of platforms.
I was playing primarily PC.
Okay, that's what I have it for. So
okay,
yeah. One thing that it was funny a couple years ago when we were playing our game, I actually had some younger guys come and play, and basically he's like, "Oh, I never played the board game. I've only played
the video game.
The video game."
Oh,
and he's
great.
like, "Oh, this is exactly like this video game." And I was like, "That's an interesting way into it."
That's a great compliment.
The board game's been out a lot longer.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah.
They also came out with a card game, Spacehulk Deathwing.
Yep.
I bought it immediately. I guess I played it a couple times. Like, didn't really enjoy it that much.
I've found that it's a love or hate kind of thing. Like some people prefer it to the board game, and people are like, "No, it's not for me." Like,
and I know they even came out with like a couple expansion packs, cards for it, but I never
that game is hard to find, and actually has quite a aftermarket demand for it.
Cool. I have two copies. If somebody would like to buy a copy, let me know.
I guarantee you someone would take you up on that.
Yeah.
I also have that. That's also on the shelf over there. I should have pulled that down too. But we don't play it that often. Every once we used to kind of bring it to cons because it was a small game, like throw it in your bag and pull it out and play. But it is like you never win. At least you never won.
I never won.
The Steelers were always too good. Yeah.
And they had they had several mission packs. Death Angel Mission Pack 1, Space Marine Pack 1 expansion, Tyranid Enemy Pack, and Deathwing Marine Pack. So, yeah, okay.
I was going to ask you, Troy, how that stacks up for you in the library of Spacehulk you have behind you there, but the fact that you said it doesn't get played much, I'm telling you, might be the answer, but...
yeah, it's purely collector at this point.
Yeah, Black Library has written tons and tons of stories about various Space Hulks and Tyranid infestations. And there's some great stuff out there. There's a Space Marine battle book I think Guy Haley wrote called I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but it'll come to me. But it's a pretty good rendition of it, where like the Adeptus Mechanicus is trying to get into the Space Hulk to find something that they're looking for, and there's like a Marine chapter too that's like, we're here to destroy this thing, and they have to end up working with the AdMech to go into this. It's pretty awesome.
There's been some cool recent things too, like Kill Team obviously with the Into the Dark set and the boarding action set, like had this kind of new emphasis on Space Hulks and bringing that back, and the new terrain set is incredible. And then also there was one of the, I think, Hammer and Bolter episodes on Warhammer TV was Chaos and Necrons, I believe.
Yeah.
Like going into a Space Hulk looking for artifacts and just framing it in that environment, I think was just a cool environment to showcase that kind of story and interaction, which is neat.
The Death of Integrity is what it's called.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a really enjoyable
I have not
book.
read that, but I have heard of it.
I have it, and you should borrow it.
I would
it's
love
fun.
to. Yeah. Nice.
It's fun. So I mean, look, there's tons of material out there around this. But it's a great game. If you haven't played it and you can pick up a set, grab a set. If somebody you know has a set, give it a try if you haven't yet. But now we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what the Basement of Death guys have done and ideas and things that we would do for Space Hulk that would even enhance the play even further. So we'll be right back. All right, and we are back. We're still here with the Basement of Death aficionado, Troy. Okay, so we talked earlier in the show a little bit about what you guys run at Adepticon. Do you run it anywhere else other than Adepticon?
Not anymore. Okay. Not anymore. And again, it came out of we were running at cons, running at Gen Con, and there was a local con here in Rockford, Illinois that we used to go through, and it really came out of, again, way back. We're going way back in like the late 90s, early 2000.
Yeah.
When we would go to Origins and Gen Con and stuff, and we would bring Spacehulk because we wanted to play it. And then I'm a big believer, if there's a game at a convention that nobody's playing, then maybe you should be running it, right? And if you think it's there. And so we then started to figure out, okay, how can we run a Spacehulk game at Gen Con? That's really where we started. And then it kind of morphed from, we would bring the box and we'd set up the map, and we had a scenario with, like 4, and we didn't run the Gene Stealers and those. We would just kind of, in some ways GM the game, have usually 4 Marine players and do that. But what we found is setting up all the little, again, from where you guys know where we ended up now, we were there, we're like, oh, it's so hard to set up all these tiles and get all the board set up back in the day. So basically what I went to then is made big giant, like, print out a map. Basically I would go in Photoshop I could build the map there and then go to like a printer, and he would make like a giant poster. And we just roll it out, we'd put kind of doors down and stuff. And so that was kind of a,
do you still have those maps?
I still have those maps. They are over in the corner over there.
That's awesome.
I think I might've sold one of them. But I still have some of the original ones that we do that. And then what was, again, we could not get the miniature player out of it though. So what we found was we'd have that board, and then we started adding 3D doors back in, and we'd add more little things on top of that. And then around, I think 2012, I discovered somebody had done this plastic, the set that we use now. I discovered that at Origins,
and it was
and I'm like, oh, this would be pretty.
Corridors.
It was extruded plastic. A small company kind of did it, and it I thought this is going to be kind of perfect for that, and bought cases and cases and got to know knew that some of those. At one point, I kind of sold a little bit through commission through them to help kind of off that, but built that, and then started out small, and then over years we kind of kept adding more and more around there, and went back to again, setting up that would now takes hours around
you guys.
So that's kind of how that came through. So
you show up with, it must be like 8 large totes at least.
Yeah, and then the fat mats.
Yeah,
is the basis.
And we do. It's 12 by 6 is the table we do now, and that's really how I got to. I mean, we were running at Gen Con, whatever. Gen Con's so big, and we have putting that thing on, you're kind of such a small fish in that giant pond. I struggled a lot to even get table space and get things. It became a big frustration. And then again, I'd been going to Adepticon almost since the beginning, and just felt like, hey, these are the people that that really like to do that. And I just kind of reached out to Hank, whatever that was, 8-10 years ago now. And he's a great guy, and he kind of, and was happy to introduce us and get us kind of in the door. And then it kind of just started to take off. And I think people always had, and even before that, we had really good feedback. Like I would, even at Gen Con, it wasn't, where I had people come and they'd be like, this is the best game I've ever played. Right. And we're like, oh, okay, there's something there, right?
Yeah.
around this to figure out what was going to happen. And then we've been lucky enough that, Hank and Matt and those guys at Adepticon have just been so great to us and given us good space and supported us in that. So
we're actually talking to Hank and Matt as part of our influential Faces of 40K series as well. So those guys have done a tremendous amount for forwarding this kind of stuff. But let's talk a little bit about, so you've gone now, I guess the final iteration or the current iteration of where you sit now, because it's not going to be the final from what we just heard, is you have these extruded plastic 3D tiles or tunnel corridors and such, combined with, I noticed some of the GW kits to build like large rooms and this kind of thing.
And the raised platforms for the second levels, you've got the supports up there to get your second level.
Yeah.
And that's, again, this year was 3D print. In the past, I've done everything else, but and so there's some I started to mix 3D print pieces in with some of the extruded
Of
stuff
course.
over the last few years.
Yeah.
Just to do
So
stuff. Which
when somebody now walks up to this, and you can see some of the pictures we have if you're watching, but
Yeah,
when
it's
somebody
a
now walks
spectacle.
up to this, what you're seeing is a spectacle is a good way of putting it. There are lights on the table. There are 3D corridors. It's a very specifically designed map that you guys have tested and tried and true run people through this. It's multi-level. There's elevators that go up and down.
Yep.
And typically you have 6 groups playing. Now, a normal game of Spacehulk is 1v1.
Correct.
What you guys are doing is you have effectively 6 players. Each player is playing a different squad on their own. You and the rest of the Basement of Death crew plus Shell are running Tyranids. And so you have this down to a science at this point. And typically what happens is let me just talk about the last mission we just played.
Yep.
Was you have 6 different players. Everybody's main objective is to get to the central location to destroy I think it was a communication device that is going to summon the Tyranids to the planet. If I remember correctly.
Yep.
Now it is very tight, right? Like you have to do it in
where you get 12 or 13
X turns,
turns to pull it off.
Yep.
And
Now, as you count out the tiles and you see, okay, if I were moving at full speed, I would barely make it there in time. But there's a few things you can do to extend that timeline.
Yes.
Some squads can go in and destroy certain
some plasma generators that if you take out the plasma generators,
it
you buy
adds
a little
another
extra
turn
time
or
on the
two.
clock.
Yeah. So as a group, the 6 players have to kind of work together. Josh getting wiped out in the game when we were playing hurts all of us. Josh gets wiped out. You almost ruined it.
I almost ruined it. I know we pulled it off with the skin of our teeth on that one.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is you guys have really embraced, Troy, you kind of have different units. So you have the standard Blood Angels unit, but you have I think a Dark Angels, you have Ultramarines, you have, I want to say Black Templars.
Black Templar, yep.
And
Kill Team.
You have an Inquisitor with
they have Death Watch. Yeah, they're Death Watch, Terminator Squad, and then an Inquisitor who's kind of whatever, and protagonist for the whole thing with his kind of very special squad.
And so now I'd played through, I think, this same scenario, maybe slightly different a couple times by this point. So I knew a couple things I had learned over the years, for example, the Ultramarines had a chaplain with them. I was playing very conservative my first game until the chaplain finally got into close combat. And then I was like, oh my God, this guy's a monster.
He gets work done.
I should have just ran him in from the get-go. So this last game we played, I realized I started on the upper level, and I had seen last year Adon playing get choked up on that upper level and stuck, and he couldn't move down because Tyranids were all around him. And so I knew right from the get-go, I'm like, you have to book it to the elevator. You can't, otherwise you will get held up. So I just started racing as fast as I could to the elevator. I took a few casualties, but that being said, I made it to the center thing, and I was not I didn't destroy the thing. Other people did, but
I made it to the second elevator and died heroically.
So let's talk a little bit about not the physical aspect of it, which we've now talked about, but how did you just tune this after year?
Yeah. And so again, like I said, initially it was us running it. So it kind of morphed. And so we would basically have 4 Marine players, and we'd actually have 2 other people come and play the Gene Stealers. And then as we kept doing that, and then we would do the same thing where we'd definitely help both sides. And especially you kind of have to help the Marine players a little bit more around some of that. But part of it was also me just seeing where people were because people were having some really fun experiences.
Right.
And so a lot of it was then how can we make it so that almost everybody or even everybody is having a good experience. And so that's where we kind of because sometimes the Gene Stealer players, so there are people who come with they love to play the Gene Stealers and that, but sometimes that was felt like, oh, I didn't get to play the Marines. I had to play the Gene Stealers.
Right.
And but some people would. So it was like, well,
one group is clearly the heroes, right?
Right, the heroes, right. And it's like, well, what if we just have everybody, and then we'll just figure out how to do that. So that was kind of one of the last big changes to do that. Also I had to make more more boards, because now we went to like, hey, now we have to handle six people around it. So that was one of the changes there was just kind of having it be more where we're running the Gene Stealers, because that it just helps control. And that said, I don't pull a lot of punches always, very much. It's a dice game in some ways. But if
somebody's making a huge error, like, you really don't want to turn your back to that door. I mean, you will point that out that, if that's what you want to do, okay, but just be aware. But what's interesting about that, you hit on a couple key points there, and it's very much like a role-playing game is what you just described. Like in Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeon Master's job is to make sure everybody gets a chance to shine and be the hero for a bit, and it's not just all focused on one player. By you guys taking control of the Tyranids all on your own and ensuring that everybody has a good time, I'm not saying you're pulling punches, although you are like, you're not pulling punches in terms of, I'm going to place my Tyranids here and I'm going to do this, but you're pointing out, let me point out to you where you're making yourself weaker. Do you still want to do that?
Some helpful guidance, but also I think you guys when you're drawing your tokens, you can be like, okay, this person is hurting. Maybe we can push this out to a different side of the board or something like that.
Yeah.
It does give us a little bit of, I'm trying to think when I played you guys, I believe I did, unlike I did a normal game. I think I was actually doing completely random because because I'm like, whatever, I'm playing you guys. I'm not going to do anything. So I think in some ways I was sometimes, but a lot of times, I will look and then, and also sometimes it's just player experience. Like if I have somebody who's brand new, whatever, okay, well, maybe they're going to see a little more Hormagaunts than somebody who I know has come back and they played a lot, whatever. Like we'll make it a little bit, again, make it more fun for them because they want it to be challenging, right?
The idea is, I don't want a cakewalk, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel a sense of accomplishment if I just walked through it.
I had to kill so many aberrants. That made it harder.
Yeah.
I actually was curious to see if you could talk a little bit about how you kind of evolved it being originally designed as a 2-player game, but then making that a 4-player game and then making that a 6-player game, and how you've expanded the missions to, like, you're kind of playing your own one-on-one game to a point in your current iteration, but then it turns into like the big team game and really everybody needs to achieve those objectives. Just from my perspective, like I died 75% of the way through that game, but I was still so invested in the game of watching what Jody was doing next to me, about what you were doing on the other side of the table, what Sky was doing. What
you'd call out to people and be like, you have to get to the generator.
Exactly.
we huddled and had a plan. We're like, okay, you're going to go to the generator. You're going to go to the generator. What are you going to do? I'm going to go here. I'm going to beeline for this, right? Okay. That's the plan. And then everything goes to hell.
Right.
But
so I'm really curious on how you took that 2-player
it.
game and evolved it to the 4-player game, to the 6-player game, and kept those mission elements in there, but also the interaction as well as just the balanced gameplay, because you guys have done a beautiful job with it.
Yeah, and it in some way, again, some of the secrets, right? I mean, it's a huge, in some ways, the spectacle, as you guys say, when you walk up to that map, right? But in the end, there's a cut and paste. There's 4 cut and pastes of what that map looks like on each corner for each player, which makes our lives
each quarter
easier,
is
right?
identical. Yeah,
right. They're really identical. They're mirrors of each other, so you may not notice but they are all mirrors of the other to the central, and actually the 2 upper things are also mirrors of them there.
Right.
And even the second level, again, we could make that whole map flat, but it wouldn't be as cool. Right. So there is also a coolness factor that a lot of times we will just, John and I and whatever, we'll just like, how can we make this more cool? Oh, let's lift it up. Right. And not thinking how much work that's going to be, but, but that's it. But also again, it's also that, each player has their, that secondary mission. Like you need to either get to that control room, get to that plasma generator to basically fulfill your part of the mission, which is then gonna help the overall mission in the center. So I think that's what we found is like that way, even if somebody again as you guys said, there's very much time. This is all about getting through on that many turns. And you almost can't do it unless somebody at least gets to that secondary objective to give the whole table more turns. So I think so. Some of that, I think, what the little bit of the magic is, that player agency. Like each person, like they have their own 5 guys, and they need to do it right. They can't. And some of that's experience over the years where I've gone to different convention games and things like that. And I don't know if sometimes when you played like big miniature games, you end up just sitting there for 3 hours, rolling some dice, moving your one squad of guys or something, and not really feeling like you had anything really about that whole game, right?
That's a great point, because you stay engaged that entire game.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. And so this was very much building it. So like, you're all trying to get to that central goal, but you really need to know what your 5 guys and what they're doing in this next turn, because you have gene sealers all around you. And, and I think that's one of the big things I love about Spacehulk is every turn I always think of it as a puzzle. Every turn I'm going to roll my command points. I'm going to find out how much action points I have. I look at the board. I'm like, I need to make another 3 squares ahead and take care of those 2 things. Am I going to do it? Great. I made it. All right. I get to play again and solve the next turn's puzzle and do that over and over again until I get to the end.
So now your next move, as you were talking about earlier, is 3D printing some stuff out.
Yep.
Are you looking at replacing all of the hallway tiles with new 3D printed stuff?
That's what my hope is. Yep. And maybe I can shoot you guys some maybe some sneak peeks.
Oh, that would be
awesome. That's over there.
Are these files
over there? But
are these files you found online, or are they files you've designed?
Yeah, no. This is. I'll give them. Dragon's Rest is the guy, the designer. I think it is one guy.
Okay.
And he has a couple different really cool sci-fi sets and things you could use for 40K. But he has, I can't remember what some I want to say HVAC or something like that. It might be, which is a weird name, but he has a set that is very much a corridor tile kind of set there. But I didn't like the doors when I first saw it. So I saw this a few years ago, and I'm like, again, thinking about a playability standpoint, the doors seem too kind of like in the way of that. And then I found kind of some third party, somebody else had kind of refactored some things and had some much more streamlined doors, and that's what really got the juices flowing again.
Nice.
And then there is this really cool, this other third party guy has an elevator. And as you guys know, the elevators are pretty cool in our scenarios. But replacing them with these elevators, I'm just really excited because I think they're going to add some really cool drama, because they're going to be very much big, very much playable, kind of like almost rooms that move up and down, more like big shafts. So we'll see how that all kind of comes together.
I'm looking at this guy's site, and holy smokes, some of this stuff is really cool.
Incredible. Yeah.
Josh, you might be in trouble.
Yep.
Wow.
I got a printer, so
I
gotta
am
get printing.
anxious to see how some of this comes out. And, you guys were so inspirational. Shell, who, again, is tangentially involved in the hobby. Like, she likes playing 40K, but she's not as, we asked if she wanted to sit in on this interview. She's like, I don't want to be on this podcast. Like, why not? She's, as wants to run this event at like a local convention here.
Yeah.
And you guys were so nice. You're like, well, we'll ship you the stuff. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to be responsible for all that stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, seeing the 3D printed model, she's going to be on me about 3D printing this stuff. But
we were talking offline too, that they're redoing all of the Terminator teams with the new Terminator stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so these are scaled up, as Troy was saying. You can speak to that, Troy, if you like.
Yeah, no, well, that was really one of the coolest things about Leviathan when that came out, right? Was like, when are they, because it's always been like, when are they really, as the new Primaris stuff has come out, you're like, oh, Terminators just don't quite feel as cool as they used to be, right?
Oh, they look so good now.
But the new ones are so cool. And so, we're going to probably, again, we'll see. I have good ambitions at this point, as I'm 7 months out from Adepticon, but I already have a couple squads built. So
are you sticking with the same teams that you already have that are tested and balanced and all that, or
we'll see. I mean, we might tweak some things. I have a good friend who is a space wolf, and so I may enlist him to help get a squad done. I'm like, hey, if you want to paint up a Space Wolf squad, or a Space Wolf squad, go for it. And then we'll probably figure out a little bit about how can we make them very Space Wolfy.
Nice.
Although those guys, again, we've always shied away. We don't have Space Wolves in there currently because Space Wolves tend to lean more toward close combat type things, which doesn't go well. There's a lot more variability in that. It's much easier to have a bad experience in that aspect. But
yeah. Well, this is fantastic, and you've already started 3D printing some of this stuff because I mean,
that's a big table of terrain to print.
It's a lot of stuff to print, man. I mean, my printer ran for a long time printing up some tiles I had found that I was like, oh, I'll use these, and then they turned out they weren't quite right to scale, and my printer bed wasn't large enough to actually make the four-way corridor.
Kind
of fit
the full intersection.
And I thought my printer bed was pretty big, but it wasn't quite big enough. And I was like, I could slice it, but so I mean, it does take a while to print this stuff. So hopefully you've already started.
We've done some tests, and I have three Ender 3s over there, and then one brand new bamboo printer that has just arrived this week get
whole production
to start really doing some real work. So
wow, okay, all right, that's like a massive set.
And then I've had a lot of people also. I know I have also other people that I can reach out to do things.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, listen. If you need some help, let me know.
Yeah,
I got a couple Terminator teams. If we
can. Oh, no, I was talking about 3D printing. I can let the printer run. That's fine.
I only have resin these days.
Yeah. Well, this is fantastic, and I love where you guys have taken it. Are you thinking about introducing more like lighting effects? Now, right now, what you use is you have a lot of different flame effects for where you put down a flamer, that kind of thing. Are you thinking about introducing potentially like LED lights into some of the corridors or stuff like that?
Yeah, again, I think as we look at the 3D tiles and being able to 3D print gives you a lot more option, right?
For sure.
That you can hollow some things out or even drill and and so again, I may outsource my brother who is a little more handy on that stuff to wire up some cool things to play around, because I think there's some that may be stuff you see in the future, maybe when you're back, Carl, in 2 years from now, you'd see more of the bling kind of thing. I think this year it'll be more of a just like, hey, let's get something that looks pretty cool on the board.
You get the klaxon spinning, you get dry ice coming in there, you get multiple levels, you get a functional elevator that actually works.
Jesus Christ.
I can't wait.
I have to say, it is such a spectacle event. Again, I know we're damaging our chances of getting into it by saying this, but if you are going to Adepticon, this is really one of those things that, and if you've played Spacehulk, we talked earlier in the episode about the Spacehulk sets that came out, and it's a 1v1 kind of thing. You guys have done such a good job of turning it into a group event that is challenging. And I think you hit it on the head, Troy, where you were saying everybody has their chance. Like, yes, you died 75% through the mission, Josh, but had you not been there soaking up those wounds, they would have come towards us.
I did kill a lot of aberrants, so had I not, that would have gone somewhere else, which would have made somebody else's day a lot harder.
And so that actually leads me into also, we're not just fighting gene stealers in this. You just mentioned aberrants. We're fighting.
You got hybrids, you got aberrants,
cultists, aberrants, gene stealers themselves. You have gaunts on the table.
Yep.
Hormagaunts?
Not in this one. Yeah. The
close combat gaunts. Right?
Close combat. Yeah. There was the hybrids. Yeah. It was hybrids and then pure strains.
Right. And then occasionally you have like a warrior.
Not in this. Again, this one. In the past one, you played in the one. So in previous editions, we had more of a pure, where you had like Tyranids, Gene Stealers, and Hormagaunts. So pure Tyranids.
Right.
And then warriors is kind of we'll call them the mini bosses, right?
Right.
That's literally what we do on some of that stuff. Lictors. I think we had still lictors in that case. And then in this current iteration, which we've run for the last, I think, 3 Adepticons or so, it's always been a Gene Sealer cult. So you had pure strain Gene Sealers, but then you had hybrids. And then we had all kinds of the Gene Sealer cult heroes as the mini bosses. So you had Aberrants, you had a Magnus show up. I think we had the Locust was our version of the Lictor because he's the sneaky guy around some of that. So it was kind of cool just to kind of take that and change it up. And then White Dwarf did have rules for Gene Sealer cult models in there that, again, we tweaked it a little bit around it, but we definitely took the inspiration right from the stuff that GW put out. So
the other thing I'd commend you guys on is what you're able to do is take somebody who has never played Spacehulk before, quickly walk them through, okay, here's how it works. Like the movement is the most important thing. And then you provide a sheet that shows,
get your cheat sheet with your abilities, how many command points, what special rerolls or equipment you get.
Like, and it explains it all. And then the other thing you do is, as these people are playing through it, you're able to help them and assist them. And okay, well, think about this and think about that as you make your moves. And I'll tell you, I mean, I was talking earlier about Shell being anxious about the airbrushing thing. She was anxious about when the first year she came in was playing this, but you guys made her feel at ease right away. She got it right away. And then, like I said, the second year she was like, do you think I could just play I want to play the Tyranids.
I want to kill Josh.
Because she wanted a little bit of experience on how to do it if she were going to run something like this. So, you do a good job of introducing, and I think that's one of the reasons this is such a popular event too. To be honest with you, you provide all the models, and you don't have to bring anything. You just show up, and we're going to show you a good time.
Yep.
And we've played with people who know how to play Spacehulk, and people who've never played it before, to the point where we had John Campos with us one time, and there was a guy there who never played before, and John told one of our friends, hey, maybe this is a good opportunity to help him and show him, because our friend was like, oh, he doesn't know how to play. It's like, so this is an opportunity to show him how to play.
It's incredibly approachable, and you guys have done just an incredible job of providing that experience, and it is a spectacle.
I don't know
highlight
anybody who has gone to this event. You're hitting all the factors. I just want to make sure we're going through and we're kind of checkboxing them off. Like, you make it approachable. It's beautiful to look at. You provide all the models. You are friendly and inviting, and all those things line up to make for a really great event. Utilizing Spacehulk,
and it's interactive the entire time for that big of a game. Like, even like if I was more efficient spending my command points and I have 2 minutes to spare, like, you better believe I'm going to go see what everybody else is doing real quick and see the state of the game, and then right there, here come the Tyranids.
And I mean, there are moments where it's like, maybe John is like attacking one person, but you're like, hey, I'm waiting for him to attack me, and one of you will jump in and go, okay, here, let me just roll these for you. And I mean, man, you guys do a good job on this. But it's interesting how you've taken a game that's really, and you kind of talked about it earlier, Josh, a 1v1 game at its core, and turned it into a group event that is so fun and inviting.
Really well executed.
I don't know how you could really, without a ton of work, replicate this in a home environment. But I know some of my friends immediately ran out and bought extra tiles because they were like, well, we could just use the actual tiles, and it's not 3D, but we can put things together that way, because people were buying. In fact, I think I have a bag of extra tiles somewhere, to be honest with you. And I think I was one of those people that did it after playing. But because people wanted the models specifically, they were off-selling the rest of the materials. So it's out there. Like, you can find it and you can experiment with it. I would say make it your own. Do you guys?
And it was interesting. I was at Gen Con beginning of August, and of course there was a group running they're running all kinds of miniature games, but they had a whole bunch of Spacehulk boards set up. They had kind of the MDF kind of board set, so kind of a 3D thing, not painted or anything else like that. I won't that, but I mean, I had it. You gotta check out the competition.
Hey, look, everybody's got to start somewhere,
right? And I like, and again, I'm like, oh, so I'll go and play. It ended up, again, they had a couple different boards. And some guys, they had, I think there were six of us, or no, must have been like 6 or 7 of us or something like that. Some guys went over there, 2 guys and me. They were like, well, hey, like they have this board set up. They had the mission for like 2 squads versus and I'm like, hey, I'll just, and basically what I did is a mini version, not intentionally at all. I'm like, and they didn't really know how to play. I'm like, hey, I'll take you through. I'll teach you how to do it.
That's cool.
And we'll do that. And get just totally unintentionally, we had a 2-hour session where I ran the Steelers, again, very much my style of like showing them why they want to do certain things. It was a cool mission where you had to get the little cat, which is the little robot, from one board to the other. So again, there were pieces there that definitely, like one squad, it was the escort. The other guy, he was trying to hold the exit while I was hammering on that. And I had 2 guys that walked away who were just time. In love with the game. And one guy who actually who comes to Adepticon, who I kind of told him who I was about halfway through. I was like, oh yeah, I want to get in that game too. But just an opportunity where I took something that wasn't exactly this, but was able to kind of, again, give those 2 guys kind of a mini experience of what I do at Adepticon around some of that. So it was pretty cool.
It's really a fantastic example of the way you can take this kind of to the next level. So
yeah.
And I mean, the other, and not related here, I mean, we've run, part of it is, again, as you go to a convention, right, where it's in some ways I feel like you're in the entertainment, like I'm providing experience.
Sure.
And you want people to enjoy it. The other thing, we have done Zombicide. I think your people are familiar with that.
Yeah.
We've also done that where we run that as a convention game. Again, very simple. 6 people. Yeah. We do the same thing, bling the hell out of it. 3D print around some of that. And we've had, again, guys that are, but again, it's taking a lot of those same concepts. And like, even then I will say GM sometimes a little bit of the zombie deck to make sure that it's tough and things may go and people may die, but we're trying not to get the full party kill or anything else. We wanted people to enjoy that 90 minutes, 2 hours that they're there and some of that stuff. So it's just kind of approaching it in a way of like, if you were that player, how would you find this the most enjoyable? And then we try and do all those things. So
have you made any of the missions or resources available on your Basement of Death website?
We have, all the rules of that we've done. And again, they're not, some of it's in my head. It doesn't all make it to paper sometimes.
Right.
Cause I think Liz, who's is on the Discord and things like that. Yeah. Her and her husband actually took one of the missions from that, and they 3D printed a whole bunch of stuff and ran up at one of their game store.
Nice.
This is probably a year or 2 ago on some of that. So they had reached out just around
Liz
some questions. What?
It's Liz Apke, I think.
Yeah, Liz. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. And she's played, her and her husband have both played over the years too.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it was great to see them again. I was totally very humbled by seeing what they were able to take about, again, one of the missions that we had done in the past that was one of the 4-player ones, and just take it and run with it and have a cool experience to it. So so all that basementofdeath.com, the Spacehulk tab. I don't know if I think I have all the latest, but kind of, you'll see different iterations over the years of the missions that we have done. So
that's great. That's great stuff. Well, listen, I think we've kind of beat this Gene Stealer to death at this point. Troy, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to all the guys at the Basement of Death that run this event. And we had such an amazing time this last year. I was so excited that, like, you would not believe when I told the group, I was like, okay, they're willing to run an extra one for us. I'm in, like, okay, do I have too many people? Oh, we have too many people. Okay, what can we do? And fortunately, like I said, Shell wanted to jump in and play the Tyranids, so it all worked out. But man, you guys have a very special thing going. I want you to know how much we all appreciate it here, and I know I'm talking myself out of being able to play it again by getting all this information, but we'll plow you with beer and pizza and try to get you to run it for us again. It won't be me this year, but the following year I'll expect my return to be better than ever, honestly.
Yeah. No, it again, in a lot of it, we put a lot of energy into it. And I mentioned my 2 brothers who I could not do without. I do a lot, but my brother John does a ton there, and my brother Ben. Like I could not run that by myself.
No way. This is not a one person.
Yeah. So I love that they commit their Adepticon to help me run that too, and all the setup and stuff too. So I want to make sure they get their props, because I could not do without them, and the other guys from the club here too that help some of that too. And my nephew, this year my nephew is starting to get his toe in the water too. Yeah, so nice. He helped us run some of that stuff too. So
these guys are just absolutely great. You exemplify everything that's fun about Adepticon for us. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Well put.
All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll take a short break. Then we'll come back and close out the show.
Sounds great.
All right. Be right back. All right, and we're back to close out episode 222. I want to thank Troy again for joining us. I want to thank all the Basement of Death guys for all the work they've done.
The whole family.
It's been amazing. So Spacehulk. It's funny, as we were prepping for this, I was looking at my Spacehulk set. I'm like, I really need to paint these terms. I'm like, what am I doing? Stay focused on the Black Legion, Carl.
With Geekend coming up in a couple of weeks here, I'm all tempted if I can try to, because I just got the new set, I don't know, a couple months ago. Like, if I can get them turned around that quick, I'll bring it.
Okay. So please leave us reviews on iTunes. Josh, as you mentioned earlier, even if you're not really watching us on YouTube, if you could go and click that subscribe button there, that would help us a tremendous amount at this point.
Help spread the good word.
Yep. We are looking to grow that. We got some stuff coming up. We're talking about streaming some stuff to YouTube, in particular, some hobby stuff that we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
We have a great Facebook group. We've talked about that a bunch. The other thing I would say is, if you are a member of that Facebook group and you want your friends to join it, please just tell them about it. Have them come in, answer the questions to join. If you send them an invite to join that group, they do not get the questionnaire, and we automatically decline those. This has really helped us prevent spam from coming into the group. And I'm telling you, every day we get spammers trying to join that group.
Yeah.
So
bots.
And you can really tell. I don't think this guy in Zimbabwe is really a 40K player. Yeah. Oh, look, let me go look at his profile. No, there's nothing about 40K here. And we've got the Patreon going. It's going strong. We've released one bonus episode to there so far. I've recorded one. I'm about to record another one. Plus, we're about to start releasing our live play of Dark Heresy.
Dark Heresy coming. Blooper,
on there.
Blooper video coming soon.
Blooper stuff will be available to everybody of all levels at the Patreon level.
It might not be family safe, though, but we will put a call out on that if that is the
case. I am able to kind of turn it off as soon as the mics are in front of my face, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, it's really become an subconscious thing where those people who meet me in person, they're like, man, Carl just swore. I'm like, I was in the army. So anyway, again, Troy, do you have anything you want to add before we kind of close out the show?
I will just talk about basementofdeath.com is kind of our website. We don't see a whole lot on there. The most interesting thing people like to read is my Horus Heresy review. So I basically have all the Horus Heresy books and kind of give you which ones you should read and which ones maybe you don't want to read, or how to get through the thing. I'm amazed at how many people actually look at that.
Nice.
Thousands of people every month still.
Wow,
I should probably update it a little bit as we get towards the end there. So, and then you can, if you care about listening to me, I'm Playing and Slaying is our kind of Basement and Death podcast. And we were
great
lucky
stuff,
enough to have Carl on there. Last month or so, and we are Omni gamers, so we do that. It's not 40K focused. It's whatever we tend to focus on, which is a lot of board games, RPGs, and a lot of miniatures. We all got together. That was kind of our base was miniature gaming. So you'll get that, including also we may talk a lot about books and things like that too. So, and we'll thank you there, Carl, for some good reference. Yeah,
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yes, right around the corner.
Oh, but book 6. Book 6 is releasing in 2 days.
2 days.
Yeah. 2 days, buddy.
Yeah, so thank you for that one. Now I'm hooked on that too. That's awesome.
Right? It is.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I was doing the interview with you guys, and you guys said, "Oh, I can't remember what you said. Is what do you like to listen to?" And I was like, "Let me tell you about the greatest book series of all time."
Right.
And man, it is way better than it has a right to be.
Yep.
It's fantastic. And the audio is the one you have to listen to.
Yes.
That reader is incredible.
The voice acting is phenomenal.
So
It's crazy.
So funny.
Yep.
Too. How far are you into it?
I just got through book 1.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna work my way through, but just totally enjoyed it. I am not like an RPG lit person at all.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we'll see what this is. But yeah, that audio, boom, like you're in. Like,
I read the synopsis of the book and I was like, this is gonna be the dumbest thing ever. Like I was like, but I had to.
I'm glad you took that.
It had my name in it.
Yeah.
I had to check it out, and I have just been blown away. And everybody I have, I have a at least once a month, but usually a little more than that, Zoom call with like John French and Ed Brown, and we just kind of sit there and chat. And our last one was nothing but like Dungeon Crawler Carl quotes, and like I don't recommend that series. Like I'm gonna reach out to the author and see if I can't get him on for an interview. But it's kind of outside of our vein, but it's just so fun. And I'm always hesitant to recommend reading something to an author, and I was like, boy, John, I hope you like this. I think you will. Like, just give it a chance. If you get 2 hours into the book and you're not enjoying it, I go, stop. But I really think you're going to like it. And next thing I know, he's like, this is great. I go, how far are you? He goes, I've just finished book 3. I'm on book 4. Like,
yep.
All right. It's so again, that series for those listening, Dungeon Crawler Carl on Audible.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So good.
Absolutely fun. Like everybody I've introduced it to, Shell doesn't listen to audiobooks and she's like, this is really good. So please check it out. I was going to ask if is anybody else in the group over there listening?
Yep, I think you have all of us at least through book 1 and maybe people into book 1 and 2.
So good.
So
Nice.
it's been great. Yeah,
Well,
really
good.
enjoying
I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it.
So, yeah, and then the other, I am on the Discord on there. I think I'm just Troy. If people, I am not a prolific poster or anything on there, but I'm always around if anybody ever has questions or anything else wants to reach out. So
fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic.
All right.
And you got anything else you want to share?
We'll, I think, put some show notes up here with links to the files and things that Troy has mentioned.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that was like incredible. And like, I'm tempted to get a table going now myself.
We should.
Yeah, we'll figure something.
Shell would be all about it.
Yeah.
We just got 3D prints and stuff, but I looked at that Dragon's Rest stuff. That stuff is
good.
Pretty sick.
It's good.
All right. Well, I guess with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. Now we've talked about Dungeon Crawler Carl again. Like my favorite book series of all time. So anyway, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
This is Troy.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where you don't want to know what that scratching behind you is.
And in space, no one can hear you scream.
And I'll see you on the wait list at Adepticon.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Say hi to all the guys over there, Troy. We had such a great time. And again, thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.